Hello and welcome to UGC E-Pathshala. I am Dr. Srikar Lama, Assistant Professor in Criminology and Police Studies at Sardar Patel University of Police, Security and Criminal Justice, Jodhpur. I am going to present the module on organized crime syndicates and its threat to internal security. The learning outcomes of this module are to make the learners understand the concept of organized crime, to make the learners understand various organized crimes syndicates, and to acquaint the learners with the concept of threat to internal security in connection to organized crimes. Criminality is a global phenomena. With the advancement of time and development of knowledge and technology, the complexities of life have multiplied. With the result, many antisocial elements think it profitable to embrace criminality as a profession to earn their livelihood. This has provided opportunities to criminals to organize themselves into criminal gangs. In the modern age of science and technology, new techniques of crime are used by the gangsters to perpetrate crimes. Generally speaking, organized crime is an act which is committed by two or more criminals as a joint venture in a systematically organized manner. It is an illegal act which the members of an unlawful association commit with mutual cooperation and adventure. Dr. Walter Reckless defines organized crime as an unlawful misadventure which is carried on by a boss, his lieutenants and operators who form a hierarchical structure for a specific period. Organized crime may be defined as unlawful activities of members of a highly organized disciplined association engaged in supplying illegal goods and services, including but not limited to gambling, prostitution, loan sharking, narcotics, labor racketeering, and other unlawful activities of members of such associations. The International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol, is in its conference held in May 1988 worked out an acceptable definition of organized crime and suggested that organized crimes means any group having a corporate structure whose primary objective is to obtain money through illegal activities, often surviving on fear and corruption. According to United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime UNODC report of year 2010, organized crimes are the result of market force rather than the plotting of dedicated criminal groups. Demand for drugs, prostitution, cheap labor, firearms, wild animal parts, child pornography and trafficking of other contrabands generates groups of organized criminals who carry on these illegal activities by use of violence, intimidation, corruption and other illegal means. Now, what is crime syndicate? The term crime syndicate refers to a gang of criminals engaged in the business of providing some forbidden or illegal service to the customers who are desirous of having it and are willing to pay handsomely for that service. Crime syndicates operate because of the availability of market for certain illegal prohibited services. Thus, gambling, bootlegging, commercialized prostitution, supply of narcotic drugs and other intoxicants, etc. are mostly carried on by the syndicates of criminals. Obviously, these crime syndicates exist because of the illegitimate public demands which cannot otherwise be legally met due to legal prohibition. The possibility of enormous profits involved in the fulfillment of these illegal demands is perhaps the main consideration involved in the organization of criminal syndicates. Criminal syndicates make huge profits, and it is primarily due to these organized criminals that many profiteers secure monopolies in illegal operation of service crimes. These monopolies are procured by persuasion, intimidation, violence and even murder. More often than not, these gangsters are extended protection and shelter by law-abiding persons in carrying on the criminal activities for soliciting an illegal service. Crime syndicates are masterminded by highly skilled and professionalized gangsters and leaders. Commenting on the working of crime syndicates, David Dressier observed that despite known arrest records and well-documented criminal statistics, the leading gangsters remain for the most part of their career immune from prosecution and punishment, although underlings of their gangs may at times be prosecuted and punished. The quasi-immunity of top-level mobsters can be ascribed to what is popularly known as fix. The fix is not always direct payment of money to law enforcement officials but may also come about through the acquisition of political power by contribution to political organizations or by creating economic ties with apparently respectable businessmen and lawyers and by buying public goodwill through charities, contributions and press relations. Now I'll discuss about the organized crime syndicates in India. India as a growing democracy is suffering from a wide range of crime, conventional or modern, organized that weakens the internal security of the nation. Some of the most serious organized crime syndicates in India are drug abuse and drug trafficking. It is perhaps the most serious organized crime affecting the country and is truly transnational in character. India is geographically situated between the countries of Golden Triangle and Golden Crescent and is a transit point for narcotic drugs produced in these regions. To the west, India also produces a considerable amount of illicit opium, part of which also finds place in the illicit market in different forms. Illicit drug trade in India centers around 5 major substances, namely heroin, hashish, opium, cannabis and methaquation. Seizures of cocaine, amphetamine and LSD are not unknown but are insignificant and rare. Now next is smuggling. Smuggling, which consists of clandestine operations leading to unrecorded trade in other major economic offense. The volume of smuggling depends on the nature of fiscal policies pursued by the government. The nature of smuggled items and the quantum thereof is also determined by the prevailing fiscal policies. India has a vast coastline of about 7,500 kilometers and open borders with Nepal and Bhutan and is prone to large-scale smuggling of contraband and other consumable items. Though it is not possible to quantify the value of contraband goods smuggled into the country, it is possible to have some idea of the extent of smuggling from the value of contraband seized, even though they may constitute a very small proportion of the actual smuggling. Next is money laundering and hawala. Money laundering means conversion of illegal and ill-gotten money into seemingly legal money so that it can be integrated into the legitimate economy. Proceeds of drug-related crimes are an important source of money laundering world over. Besides, tax evasion and violation of exchange regulations play an important role in merging this ill-gotten money with tax-evaded income so as to obscure its origin. This aim is generally achieved via the intricate steps of placement, layering and integration so that the money so integrated in the legitimate economy can be freely used by the offenders without any fear of detection. Money laundering poses a serious threat world over, not only to the criminal justice systems of these countries but also to their sovereignty. Next is terrorism and narco-terrorism. Terrorism is a serious problem which India is facing. Conceptually, terrorism does not fall in the category of organized crime as the dominant motive behind terrorism is political and or ideological and not the acquisition of money and power. The Indian experience, however, shows that the criminals are perpetrating all kinds of crimes such as killings, rapes, kidnappings, gun running and drug trafficking under the umbrella of terrorist organizations. Next is contract killings. The offence of murder is punishable under Section 302 IPC by life imprisonment or death sentence. Conviction rate in murder cases is about 38%. The chance of detection in contract killings is quite low. The method adopted in contract killings is by engaging a professional gang for a monetary consideration. Next is kidnapping for ransom. Kidnapping for ransom is a highly organized crime in urban conglomerate, etc. There are several local as well as interstate gangs involved in it as the financial rewards are immense vis-a-vis the labor and risk involved. Illegal immigration. A large number of Indians are working abroad, particularly in the Gulf region. Young people want to move to foreign countries for lucrative jobs. Large-scale migration is fostered by the high rate of unemployment in the country and higher wage levels in foreign lands. As it is not easy for the aspirants to obtain valid travel documents and jobs abroad, they fall into the trap of unscrupulous travel agents and employment agencies. Prostitution, trading in sex and girl running is a very profitable business in which the underworld plays an important part. Flesh trade has been flourishing in India in various places and in different forms. The underworld is closely connected with brothels and call girl rackets, making plenty of money through this activity. They supply young girls to brothels in different parts of the country, shuttling them and to and fro from the city to minimize the risk of their being rescued. Now I'll talk about the threat to internal security by organized crimes. Organized criminal groups connect with terrorist groups as financiers of attacks. Thus, the connection between money and violence is established, which in contemporary social circumstances represents an ideal combination for the fulfillment of various extremist goals. In that light, organized crime represents a new form of security threats, which is also called non-traditional or soft security threats, whereby a distinction from traditional security threats is made, which were primarily related to war and the danger of invasion. Organized crime is a threat that is well connected with terrorism in India. Criminal groups in South Asia have been known to collaborate with terrorist groups in international operations on a variety of levels. The connections include logistical support in weapons procurement, shared routes, training and ideological overlap. Criminal syndicates have also been identified for their involvement in the nuclear smuggling network of Pakistan. While organized crime involves many activities, the linkages with terrorism stem from illegal trafficking of drugs, arms and human beings, and money laundering also. Terrorist groups, whether indigenous or sponsored by outside states, need arms and money for their fight against the security forces. Organized crime conglomerates need a clientele and couriers who can smuggle drugs, arms and human beings across the countries and regions in India. The linkages between the two exist at national and transnational levels. At the national level, both terrorists are involved in organized crime are within India. At the international level, collaboration exists between transnational syndicates and terrorists from inside and outside India. Extortion, kidnap contracts and black marketing still fall short of financing the nefarious activities of the militants. This is where transnational drugs and arms syndicates come into play. Terrorist organizations in India, especially in the northeast, mobilize funds by becoming couriers of illegal drugs and arms and at times even human beings from one point to another within the country. Some of the infamous entry points from Southeast Asia include Moreh and the entire Chittagong Hill tracts, especially Cox's Bazar. Initially, international criminal syndicates had their own network. However, with these routes being taken over by various terrorist groups in the northeastern states, the syndicates started using these groups instead of bribing them to let their consignment get through. In Kashmir, the linkages between terrorists and organized crime exist at a different level. Unlike the northeast, reliance on funds from extortion and other related means is minimal. There is no parallel government in Kashmir and government resources do not reach militant hands. However, external funds compensate for inadequate internal mobilization. External funds reach the militant organizations fighting in Kashmir through various means. For instance, enormous funds that are mobilized in Pakistan and other Muslim countries, especially in the Gulf, are channeled through various organizations in Pakistan to Kashmir. Markaz Dawa al-Arshad, for example, mobilizes funds from inside and outside Pakistan to support its militant wing Lashkar-e-Toiba. Besides, external funds are also routed through select organizations and individuals in Kashmir which finally reach the militants. Money laundering plays a significant role. Hawala money laundering transactions take place swiftly and effectively in Kashmir. Besides, it is also believed that the ISI uses drug money to fund militant activities in Kashmir. Another significant relationship between organized crime and terrorism, especially in Kashmir, is through the spread of counterfeit money or currency. Terrorists are the main couriers of Indian counterfeit currency inside Kashmir, which then spreads all over India. Even guides for the militants from across the border are paid with counterfeit money. In fact, when some of the indigenous militants were also paid with counterfeits, it resulted in a squabble between them and the so-called guest militants. Besides Kashmir and the northeast, sporadic incidents in other parts of India like the Bombay blast, for instance, have exposed the connection between terrorism and organized crime. This is distinct from the traditional linkages flourishing between organized crime syndicates and local criminals. South Asian organized crime syndicates are transnational in character. In response to efforts to intercept them, these groups increasingly seek refuge in Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates, and other countries. Further afield such as Canada, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Kenya, and Portugal. By fleeing from across borders, their identities are difficult to track and the entry they go unnoticed. Some countries may tactify allow their presence. During the 1980s, Pakistan's military developed strong links to drug barons involved in the Afghan heroin trade. By the 1990s, government and military efforts began in earnest to address the threat but had limited effect. Money laundering and kickbacks had already been well integrated into Indian politics and industry. Drug trafficking poses a highly entrenched threat to India. Much of the trafficking and narcotics and other illegal drugs in Asia traverses South Asia. Routes cross from Burma, Laos and Thailand, Golden Triangle, through India as well as from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iran, the Golden Crescent. Traffickers send narcotics from Afghanistan to Pakistan and through South India to the ocean and onto the destinations in Europe and Russia. Heroin and other drugs are transferred from Southeast Asia and Myanmar through India to Western destinations. India is also the world's largest legal producer of opium for pharmaceutical purposes. A small part of this licit production is diverted to be sold abroad illegally by organized crime gangs, although the majority of diverted opium is used locally. Crime syndicates dominate the trade in people in South Asia and the numbers of prostitutes in or trafficked from the region runs into the millions. Women are smuggled into India from Nepal and Bangladesh. The trafficking leads to yet another transnational threat, the rapid spread of AIDS in the region. The fact that a large number of the prostitutes in India are trafficked underlines the need for a concerted effort to combat both challenges. In addition to human trafficking within South Asia, an unknown large number of young girls are sent and sold to Arab countries each year, and small boys are also sold to the Arab state as camel racers. Dubai remains a popular destination and transfer point for prostitution organized by Indian criminal networks. These human smuggling routes could easily be leveraged by terrorist groups to transfer personnel and weaponry. Transnational money laundering networks, also known in South Asia as Hawala, poses a threat in several arenas. These Hawala networks originally arose from the weakness of the banking system in rural areas. The system, which relies on trust between individuals and social networks, is common in South Asia and the Middle East. Transactions can be as simple as an individual in Mumbai paying the illegal vendor $5,000 in cash, with another individual receiving the $5,000 in dollars in New York, with little or no record of the transaction having taken place. The scale of such transactions is unknown, thereby leading to ubiquitous use of Hawala by criminal and terrorist groups to transfer illegal proceeds. Now, what are the problems in control efforts? There are many legislatives and implementation issues due to which the efforts made to combat the organized crimes are not fruitful. Some of them may be understood by examining certain points like inadequate legal structure. There are several difficulties in combating organized crime. First of all, India does not have a special law to control or suppress organized crime. Being a continuing conspiracy, the incidents of organized crime are dealt with under the general conspiracy law and relevant special acts. The existing law is inadequate as it targets individuals and not the criminal groups or criminal enterprises. Conspiracies are hatched in darkness and proving them in a court of law is a Herculean task. Difficulties in obtaining proof. As organized criminal groups are structured in a hierarchical manner, the higher echelons of leadership are insulated from law enforcement. It may be possible to have the actual perpetrators of crime convicted, but it is difficult to go beyond them in the hierarchy because of rules of evidence, particularly non-admissibility of confessions made by criminals before the police. The witnesses are not willing to depose for fear of their lives, and there is no law to provide protection to the witnesses against organized gangs. The informers are not willing to come forward as some kind of stigma is attached to being an informer. Now, lack of resources and training. In our constitutional framework, the police are the state subject. Investigation of cases, their prosecution and the setting up of the criminal courts is the responsibility of the state government concerned. Most of the states face a resource crunch and are not in the position to spare adequate resources for the criminal justice system agencies. The number of police personnel posted in police stations is inadequate. Besides, hardly any training facilities exist for the investigation of organized crime. Lack of coordination. India does not have a national level agency to coordinate the efforts of the state or city police organizations as well as central enforcement agencies for combating organized crime. Further, there is no agency to collect, collate, analyze, document and function as a central exchange of information relating to international and interstate gangs operating in India and abroad. Similarly, there is no system of sustained pursuit of selected gangs at the national and state level. Apart from lack of institutional framework, there are problems of coordination between the central government and the state governments and between one state government and another state government due to differences in political perceptions. Criminal, political and bureaucratic nexus. There has been a rapid spread and growth of criminal gangs, armed forces, drug mafias, smuggling gangs, drug peddlers and economic lobbyists in the country, which have over the years developed an extensive network of contacts with the bureaucrats, government functionaries, politicians, media persons and democratically elected individuals at the local level. Some of these syndicates also have international linkages, including with the foreign intelligence agencies. In certain states like Bihar, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, these gangs enjoy the patronage of local level politicians cutting across party lines. Dual criminality. The crime syndicate do not respect national boundaries. Certain crimes, particularly drug trafficking, are planned in one part of the world and executed in another. Criminals also move fast from one part of the globe to another. Different nations have different legal structures. A certain act may be crime in one country but not in another. To illustrate, money laundering is crime in USA and several European countries but not in India. It may be concluded that with the widespread use of electronic communication and rise of internet, to handle things such as e-trading, shopping, banking, etc., the security and reliability of these networks needs to be measured and assured for the well-being of trade, commerce and industry. The emerging trend of cyber crimes which are committed in an organized manner necessitates adequate legal measures to be initiated to ensure the perpetrators of such crimes are held accountable for the illegal activities. The International Chamber of Commerce has established an anti-cyber crime unit which will work in cooperation with Interpol, International Criminal Police Organization, to combat organized cyber crimes. In the wake of these new developments in modern science and technology, there has been unprecedented increase in opportunities and resources for organized crimes all over the world. The age-old methods of crime detection and investigation have therefore been rendered inadequate to meet the new challenges. Computerization of the working of police and use of computerized forensic methods for crime investigation along with video conferencing technology for administrative and judicial work electronic filing of documents and access through websites, etc. Some of the measures which would enhance the efficiency of police to exercise effective control on organized crimes. Although a beginning has already been made in the direction, but further steps must be taken to convert all the existing police stations into electronically flexible stations having internet link and integration of audio, video and data communication and information facilities. Thank you.